Somebody want to tell the Obamas that, Democrats have run the White House for 12 of the last 16 years. It's not 2008 anymore. Obama's starting to sound like the guy who is stuck in high school. He's still wearing his varsity jacket to his old high school football games, even though he's like in his mid-20s. That's who Barack Obama is becoming. It's good to be here on a Wednesday on KCMO 95.7 FM. I just watched and smiled last night. I wasn't mad. I wasn't like, I'm
getting pissed now.
I wasn't really. I was just like, is this the approach that Barack Obama and his wife Michelle, who are the headliners at DNC Night 2 last night, are really going to take? Are they going to gaslight us to the point where we are supposed to just act like over the last 16 years, he was president for 8 of them, and his former VP has been the guy in charge for the last 4? Am I supposed to act like that's a country I have not been living in? Because for most of my adult life, really all of my adult life, Barack Obama or Joe Biden have been president. So this whole dog and pony show of, oh, boy, it's all Trump's fault. Everything bad in your life is the fault of Donald Trump. If you don't like where the country's at, well, it's always about the orange man. He is just the absolute worst. And he's the reason that things aren't going well for you. And you can't even think about putting that guy back in the White House. Really? That's the pitch, huh? That's the approach here, huh? And the most telling part to me, and we've got audio from Obama that, whether you like it or not, we'll use throughout the morning here on KCMO. But the most telling part for me is how he talked about Kamala Harris. And not what Barack Obama said about Kamala Harris. He was going to brag about the prosecutor, tough as nails, blah, blah, blah. It was the way he spoke about Kamala Harris. And it's a very carefully crafted message here from the former president. He talked about Kamala Harris in a future tense.
She'll work on behalf of every American. That's who Kamala is. And in the White House, she will have an outstanding partner.
She will work and she will have. Kamala Harris has been in the White House every day for the last 3.5 years. Kamala Harris is not somebody who is now potentially being given a chance to run the country as this great visionary. Kamala Harris is potentially going to be in the White House after spending the last 4 in the White House as the vice president. But it's very tricky and it's very smart, and Barack Obama, love him or hate him, is a very bright man, to use Kamala Harris and talk about Kamala Harris in future tense, as if she is completely absolved from anything over the last 3.5 years. It's why Obama waxed poetically last night about his old pal, Joe Biden. And according to multiple media reports last night, the reason that Kamala Harris was not there for the speech was because there's still a lot of beef between the Bidens and the Obamas on how the last month went down in this country, specifically, of course, in the Democratic Party. So it was kind of awkward that Kamala's not there as the Obamas are giving these speeches, 2 of the highlights of the week. And apparently it's because there's still so many issues between the Bidens and the Obamas over Joe getting tossed overboard about a month ago. So there's more division than is being let on. But to the credit of all the people involved, you just watched last night, you pop on that TV, and man, you'd think unity, 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 and some more unity. And that was the goal for Barack Obama, and he's very good at it. He is. But I couldn't help but watch a guy insist that Donald Trump is the worst possible thing that could happen to the country when 12 of the last 16 years, a Democrat has been in the White House. It's just unbelievable to me. And maybe there's people who are going to buy that. Maybe there's people who are going to say, gosh, yeah, that does make some sense there, Barack. But I just think to myself, no, it doesn't. And not because of any partisan beliefs, But just because if these people are going to make my life so significantly better, why has it not been done? What are we waiting for? And what's that thing that Kamala Harris is going to do that they failed to do or they couldn't do? And, of course, those are questions that they're not going to give you any kind of black and white straight answer to. But, it's the thing I'd be asking. And then you had the class warfare. And that's always how it goes. The Obamas are masters of class warfare. You had Barack calling Donald Trump the old rich conspiracy guy.
Here's a 78-year-old billionaire who has not stopped whining about his problems since he rode down his golden escalator 9 years ago. It has been a constant stream of gripes and grievances.
Once again, memo to Barack Obama. It's not 2008. You are now one of those very, 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 very rich guys worth tens of millions of dollars that you beat the you-know-what out of to get yourself into the White House and then get 4 more years. You own a home on Martha's Vineyard. Memo to Obama. You own a home, and not a shack, by the way. A mansion on the ocean.
What, this old thing?
On Martha's Vineyard. That shtick is 16 years old, my man. It doesn't work anymore. And then Michelle, also very much into the class warfare game.
You see, my mom, in her steady, quiet way, lived out that striving sense of hope every single day of her life. She believed that all children, all people have value, that anyone can succeed if given the opportunity. She and my father didn't aspire to be wealthy. In fact, they were suspicious of folks who took more than they needed. They understood that it wasn't enough for their kids to thrive if everyone else around us was drowning.
Suspicious of folks who took more than they needed. Does Michelle Obama and Barack Obama need that mansion on the ocean in Martha's Vineyard? Once again, that worked 16 years ago. When Barack was a junior U.S. senator, no one really knew who he was. Former community activist, had a nice family and still does to his credit. But now you're the guy that you ragged on for all those years. That's who you are. And by the way, you're only rich because of your roles in government, not because of creating a single thing in the private sector, creating a single job, doing anything innovative in the private space. Nothing when it comes to capitalism. Just profiting off your roles in government. But you are now that very wealthy person and wealthy family that you rag on. And I got to listen to Michelle Obama talk about, boy, my parents were always suspicious of people who took more than they needed. Well, look in the mirror.
You didn't build that.
Yeah, bingo. Never forget that. And I would ask Barack Obama 16 years later, what did you build? 913-408-7957. That was night 2 in the books last night. Can you believe it? It's only halfway done.
I would have thought affordable housing would have been on the agenda because Trump is living rent-free there in every speaker's head, right?
Oh, it's so true, man. It is so true. 913-408-7957. Now, what about Donald Trump? I heard Donald Trump say something yesterday to a CNN reporter about the Obamas that made my jaw drop. I will play it for you next on 95.7 FM KCMO. And you want to be streaming us all morning long on the KCMO Talk Radio app. So let me play this clip of Donald Trump yesterday being interviewed by CNN. And this took place, hours before the Obamas were going to take the stage last night at the DNC. And also a situation where Donald Trump probably knew he was going to get blasted, Probably knew he was going to get called names. But for all the times that we say about Donald Trump, put down the phone, stay focused, stay on the ball, don't worry about some of the nonsense, don't give your media critics fodder for days. I got to give credit where it's due on the other side. So take a listen to Donald Trump talking about Barack Obama and Michelle yesterday in a clip on CNN that, to CNN's credit, they ran as a headline, and it sounded like this.
I like him. I think he's a nice gentleman, but he was very, very weak on trade. If you take a look at what happened to our country trade-wise, it was a disaster. Take a look at Japan, take a look at China, take a look at what happened with some of these countries, what they did. But I happen to like him. I respect him, and I respect his wife.
I happen to like him, I respect him, and I respect his wife. Now, how did they return the favor last night? They called him an old, rich, conspiracy-laden racist. Yes, that's what they did last night.
Such a nice man.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's what they did in return. If the roles had been reversed, just, put the shoe on the other foot for a second here. If the roles had been reversed and Barack Obama or Bill Clinton had said about Donald Trump, I like him, I respect his wife, and then Trump got up there and did what the Obamas did to Obama last night, my goodness. There would be outrage in the media. They'd be losing their minds over Donald Trump doing such a thing. But when they do it, it's okay. And I seem to remember an era, too, back in 2016, when Michelle Obama infamously said, when they go low, we go high. Well, nobody was going high last night. It was all low. And the reason it was all low is because when you've been in power for the last 3.5 years and the American people don't think you've done a good job, and that is evident based on all the polling, all you can do is say, yeah, but the other guy's really bad. The other guy's really scary. You think we've done a bad job? Just wait till that guy's in power. You ain't seen nothing yet. Here's the problem. The American people have seen 4 years of Donald Trump in the White House. And they may not love the antics. They may not love some of the nonsense. They may not love the reality TV approach that he sometimes takes. But they certainly can look at the numbers on the balance sheet on their own kitchen table and say, it actually was better. There actually was more left over. There actually were more opportunities. And that's what, in large part, if Donald Trump plays his cards right, this thing is going to come down to. He can't make it a popularity contest. I hate to break it to Trump, but he's not going to win the popularity contest. Not when you've got all of media and you've got all of Hollywood against you. You can't make it a popularity contest. You have to have a forward vision. You have to have some positivity. And you have to say, let's go back to the good times together or the better times together. What did you like better? Are you better off now than you were 5 years ago? That's the question that can be asked and can be asked pretty effectively. 913-408-7957. That's the text line and the studio line here on KCMO. Mike is in Kansas City. Mike, what's happening, my man?
Yeah, they're writing commercials for Trump. Two real quick ones. One where they were talking about the greed and all that about Trump. Trump lost money while he was in office. So you have a commercial showing this is Donald Trump's net worth on Inauguration Day. This is Donald Trump's net worth after inauguration or currently, and show the drop. Then show Obama and Biden and Harris, everybody. And then at the very last thing, you show this is the American people, average American people's net worth when Trump was in office, and this is what their average worth is now. You've got a commercial written for you. The second commercial is let's restore civility back into politics. And you have the CNN clip of Trump saying how nice Obama and his wife are, that they're nice people, and then contrast that with all the vitriol and the hate speech that they gave to him yesterday, and says, I'm Donald Trump. I approve this message.
Yeah.
Yes, let's return civility.
Yeah, the civility might be, thank you, Mike, might be a stretch coming from Trump, but I see what you did there, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with highlighting that and showing that clip that I just played and contrasting it with, Michelle Obama blasting Trump and calling him, an old racist.
For years, Donald Trump did everything in his power to try to make people fear us. See, his limited, narrow view of the world made him feel threatened by the existence of two hardworking, highly educated, successful people who happen to be black. Who's going to tell him that the job he's currently seeking might just be one of those black jobs?
That was Michelle Obama last night. Her first 10 minutes, and I watched Michelle's entire speech, it was fine. It was harmless enough. And then right at the 10-minute mark, it changed on a dime. And it went into full-blown attack dog mode. Donald Trump's a racist. I'm the victim. And it's very difficult, very, very difficult to connect as the victim when you own a $20 million home on 29.3 acres with 7 bedrooms, 8.5 baths, and several stone fireplaces in Martha's Vineyard. It's very difficult to pull out the victim card. But there's enough blind loyalty that I guess she can pull it off to some degree. How well it works, that remains to be seen. Because here's the thing. That was just a moment last night. Tim Walz could blow the whole thing up tonight. That guy gets goofier by the day. He really does. And tonight is his night to shine as the VP pick, and he could sink this thing real fast. 913-408-7957. Now, what about the Aldi brand Obama? That would be Kansas City Mayor Quentin Lucas. He's in some beef we'll tell you about with KCPD, and we'll get to it next. Well, I figure with the night being all about Obama last night, we got to show some love for the Aldi brand Obama here in Kansas City, and that would be Quentin Lucas. And no, that's not meant to be an insult. Quentin Lucas calls himself that on his own X account. It's right there on X. He refers to himself as Aldi brand Obama, so it's not meant to be a negative. I mean, he likes that nickname. He likes being called that. So the Aldi brand Obama is very upset. And we will talk to him again tomorrow morning at 7:30 on KCMO. He is very upset with how Missouri voters voted 2 weeks ago yesterday in the primary on this issue of Amendment 4. Amendment 4 was a constitutional amendment that was put on the ballot that targeted Kansas City, of course, and required Kansas City to increase funding for the police department to 25%. Some of you already know the story. Real quick for those that don't. In 2021, the city pulled some shenanigans after they approved the budget where it looked like they were attempting a defund of the police. They will tell you they weren't. The mayor will say he wasn't. That's up to interpretation. Then you got responses from leadership at the state level in Jeff City. Tony Luchtenmeyer is a state senator from Parkville, and he pushed this thing to get it on a ballot. It passed in 2022 that Kansas City increased its police funding from 20% of the budget to 25% of the budget. It passed. It then got overturned by a judge. It was back on the ballot 2 weeks ago, and it passed again, albeit by a much smaller margin, 51 or 52 to 48, 51-49, something like that. But either way, the end result's the same. Kansas City now has to fund its police department with 25% of the general fund. Now, Kansas City was already more or less doing that. The city, for the last couple of years, has been at the threshold of 25% funding for the police. But it's not about increasing funding necessarily. What it really has always been about is about preventing a defund of the police. It's always been more about protecting Kansas City residents from electing a bunch of clowns who think the answer in policing is to actually get rid of cops. Now, for the most part, the pendulum has swung back to normalcy the last 3 years. In 2020 and 2021, there was a movement and there were attempts in places like Minneapolis to actually defund and get rid of cops. And there was this amazing thing that happened. I know you would have never thought this would take place. You're stunned by what happened. You're shocked by the case study. That getting rid of cops actually led to an increase in crime.
Talk about a bombshell.
I know. Who would have seen that coming, right? Who would have ever predicted getting rid of the police would lead to more crime? No one in a million years would have ever predicted that. So you look at all the examples of where that's been tried, and it's failed. But what this really was about is, yes, politics were involved. I'm not denying that from both sides of the political aisle, including the Republican side, that politics were involved here. But in the end, what Kansas Cityans now are guaranteed is no matter who is on the city council, they know that the police will get the funding that they need to the tune of 25% of the general fund. But Mayor Lucas is still not happy about it. So he's talking to outlets like The Pitch. The Pitch, how would we describe The Pitch? I don't want to put you guys in a tough spot. I mean, outside of a newspaper that you should probably line the birdcage with, how would we describe The Pitch?
Yeah, it's the periodical with the directions printed right on the front.
Yes. And they are very left-leaning, fair to say, on the opinions.
Yeah, they used to be local, but I don't know. It's just one of these deals where every city has the same thing, and a template, fill in the blanks.
The Pitch, Kansas City's independent source for news and culture is what they say. Mm-hmm. That's what they call themselves. But basically, it's for left-wing hipsters. And Quentin Lucas was quoted in The Pitch yesterday as saying this after the passing of Amendment 4. What Amendment 4 means for us when they direct our budgeting, other than the fact that it is unfair, it is arbitrary that it is applied to only Kansas City, and it has not improved a public safety benefit for a city that's experienced its highest ever homicide rate in 2 of the last 4 years in its history. All those things make it clear the system does not work. He told The Pitch, the current system does not work. We need more accountability, not less. We need more innovations in policing, not less. The funding mechanisms do not change your ability as the mayor and the Board of Police Commissioners to be innovative. If Quentin Lucas has this awesome idea to be innovative with the police force, there's nothing that is stopping him from doing it. All this is doing is saying that you can't defund the police. I'm glad that Amendment 4 passed, and it's the very least that this city can be doing for the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department right now, but more importantly, for the safety of its people. So when the mayor's on tomorrow, I'll say, what are you not doing that you want to do when it comes to the police department? And when we talk about homicides, when you talk about the issues this town has seen over the last couple of years, let's be very clear. The issues in this town are not driven by the fact that, God forbid, the cops are getting 25% of the budget, which they more or less have been getting anyway for the last couple of years. You've got the worst prosecutor in the state in Jackson County and Gene Peters Baker. They're down 350 cops because this town, and too many in this town, made it so unappealing for cops to do their job in 2020 and the 2021 that they quit. I know some of you are going to try to gaslight around this and act like, oh, boy, I can't believe we don't have 350 cops. How many retired early? How many don't want to be the next Eric DeValcanair? How many said, screw this and screw this city's leadership, we're done? And then there's the human nature of who's going to become a cop right now. They're begging people to do this job. But you still got to have some standards. There has not been a city jail for almost 10 years. You have a county jail that's a fraction of the size that's needed. And just a couple of years ago, you have folks in charge in this town who claimed the police were the problem. You made enemies with those who every day put their lives on the line to protect the rest of us. And the problem is Amendment 4 passing. And the problem is 25% for the police? That's the problem? Please. With all due respect to the mayor, and he will be on the show tomorrow, and I will ask him what his outstanding idea is. What is missing? What's that thing that needs to happen that he can't get done under the current system that will, voila, magically fix law enforcement in this town? What is that thing? Is there going to be a direct answer? I'm not going to hold my breath. I would love there to be a direct answer. I will pray that there is a direct answer. I don't think there will be. Because much like Barack Obama has been known to gaslight once or twice in his life, this is the Aldi brand version of gaslighting here in Kansas City. It is ridiculous to suggest that any of the issues that Kansas City has dealt with on homicides and crime have anything to do with the funding mechanisms of this police department. If nothing else, it's the only thing saving this town from complete and utter chaos. 913-408-7957. We got a busy morning ahead. We're going to have on next hour Steve Shute, the mayor of Gardner, Kansas. They are pushing back on the funding for the low-barrier homeless shelter being proposed in Lenexa. Roger Marshall, Kansas U.S. Senator, is 1 hour away. We'll talk to him about J.D. Vance coming to town tomorrow. Charlie Gasparino from the Fox Business Network will be here just after 8 o'clock, and our buddy Patrick Toohey from the Show Me Institute on KCMO 95.7 FM. As always, we are streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app. Coming up, a tax plan from Kamala Harris that, I'll just say this much. Hold on to your wallets. We'll get to it next. Well, this sounds awfully messy. Kamala Harris endorsing Joe Biden's 2025 capital gains tax proposal, which would raise long-term capital gains tax rates to 44.6%, which would mark the highest long-term capital gains tax rate since 1922. The plan has also proposed a 25% tax on unrealized capital gains for wealthy individuals. Now, is this going to pass if Kamala Harris gets in the White House? Highly likely that it will not. It's highly unlikely that that would ever pass, at least based on where things stand right now. That being said, even having the idea of doing something like this, even having the proposal and the support for taxing unrealized capital gains for wealthy individuals, even if it's only going to impact a handful of people. We don't have any guidelines on what exactly the definition is of wealthy people. But even having this out there as an idea is so wildly concerning. Unless, of course, you like the idea of full-blown socialism, which, of course, we know there's at least an element of Kamala Harris that does. So this was all the buzz yesterday that Kamala Harris, at least in part, wants to extract $5 trillion in tax increases from American households and businesses. Her campaign confirmed this week as they officially endorsed the laundry list of new and higher taxes, including the Biden-Harris administration's fiscal year 2025 budget. What does that include? Small business tax rate hikes to 39.6% from the current 37%. Corporate tax rates higher than the EU and even communist China hiked the current 21% federal corporate income tax rate to 28%. China's is 25%. The EU average, by the way, is 21%. So just put that into some perspective. Capital gains and dividends taxes more than twice as high as communist China. Yes. The proposal says here it would increase the top marginal rate on long-term capital gains and qualified dividends to 44.6%. China's got a capital tax rate of 20%. These are awful ideas that will drive money out of the United States, will drive wealth out of the United States, and will not be the boon to the, working stiffs that they claim it will be. I know they still have this idea of like, if we just soak the rich enough, your life will be better. Tell me why that didn't happen and has not happened over the last 16 years when Democrats have run the White House for 12 of those 16 years. Why? Oh, because really rich people are very, very, well, they're not all very smart, actually, but they have smart people that work for them. We'll put it that way. They've got great accountants. They've got great lawyers. They've got ways to pay the government as little as possible via loopholes. In the end, the money is always with the middle class. And any tax proposal that starts as just a way to soak the rich to help the little guy rarely ever ends up like that. And then Kamala Harris also endorsed budget calls for an annual 25% minimum tax on the unrealized gains of individuals with income and assets exceeding $100 million. But as is always the case, the threshold would undeniably decrease over time. Now, let me just ask you this. You don't have to be some kind of investing guru to go through this example with me, right? Imagine you own a stock, and that stock goes up, and it's time to file your taxes. And you have to pay unrealized gains or unrealized taxes on those gains. So you own a bunch of Apple stock. You've owned it. You had a great year with Apple. It was up 15, 20%. Well, you've got to pay taxes on the gains on your Apple stock, despite the fact that you didn't sell the Apple stock. Right? Like right now, if you sell your Apple stock and you make money, you'll pay capital gains taxes on the Apple stock. I don't like the idea of the government taxing you for everything, but whatever. At least you understand that. You've sold the stock. You made some money. Well, this is not about selling the stock and making money. This is about the idea of hanging on to your Apple stock and paying taxes on gains that you technically have not profited from yet. You haven't sold the stock. In many respects, it's kind of like property taxes on your home. Like you don't sell your house, but your taxes for your house continue to go up. A little bit different in the sense that, they'll say, well, it's funding your roads and your bridges and your schools and your cops and this and that. A little bit different, but same idea. Now, imagine you own this stock, right? You own this Apple stock. It goes up, you pay the unrealized taxes, but then it comes back down. You end up losing money. You going to get a refund? Of course not. That's not what they're talking about. If your Apple stock went from $100 to $120 a share, you made 20% on the Apple stock. The next year it goes down, let's say, to $90 a share. No one's giving you a refund on any of this. So what does that mean? People will not be incentivized to invest in the markets. If you have to pay taxes on gains you're not pocketing, and then when you do sell your gains, your tax rate is to the moon at 44.5%. But if you lose money, by the way, in a trade, you got nothing to show for it. What's going to happen then? The smart money, the wise guys, are going to figure out a better bet. They're going to figure out a way that makes them the most money with the littlest risk. And you might say, Pete, I don't care. I don't have $100 million. I'm never going to have $100 million. What do I care? Well, if you have a 401k, you should care. You should want not just the United States, but you should want the world to view the United States stock market as the best bet in the world. And that's one of the reasons the market's done so well the last few years. Because while America maybe on Main Street hasn't done great, at least we've been in a position where we're the best option. We might only be a 6 out of 10, but we're a heck of a lot better in terms of betting on our markets and betting on our economy than you are betting on any market in Asia, any market in Europe, anywhere else in the developing world. We're still the best bet. And that has been beneficial for all of us who just, have a few nickels in a 401k or an IRA or something like that. It has benefited all of us on that front. But policies like this, forget it. Charlie Gasparino with the Fox Business Network, he's going to be on the show in 1 hour. And he put up this tweet last night, or this X post last night. He said, I've been lectured for 2 days by a very big supporter of Kamala Harris, he says a household name, who tells me the tax on unrealized capital gains may be in the Democratic platform, but that does not necessarily mean she supports it. Adding, quote, it's Biden's proposal. Charlie writes, yeah, but it's her platform. You literally can't make this bleep up. That's from Charlie Gasparino. And I can't wait to talk to him coming up at 8 o'clock here on KCMO 95.7 FM. As always, we are streaming all morning long on the KCMO Talk Radio app and also on the iHeart app. Make sure you're checking us out there either before you get in the car or after you get to the office. You just heard it at the top of the hour from Fox, but RFK Jr. and his running mate, Nicole Shanahan, have said this week they are considering ending their independent campaign to endorse Donald Trump. Now, in a race that right now is a coin flip, that matters. Kennedy's polling anywhere from 3, 4, 5%. That would be quite a bump. And not that everybody who is supporting RFK would automatically go support Donald Trump. The majority would. I mean, RFK has much more in common with Trump than he does with Kamala Harris and the Democrats. And I think they realize that. He's goofy on all the green energy stuff. And, he's not my cup of tea on some of the social issues. But in terms of, fighting for health freedoms, transparency, I know he wants to get to the bottom of some of what he suggests would be cover-ups in certain bureaucracies within the federal government. That's much more in line with Donald Trump than it is with Kamala Harris, Barack Obama, and the Democratic Party right now, which has become the definition of the establishment, of the big bloated bureaucracy and status quo. There's no way RFK would have any credibility left if he went out and endorsed that, even though he's technically a Democrat by nature, because it's not really in many cases for RFK traditional Democrat issues versus traditional Republican issues. He's kind of got some of these, pet projects and things that he likes to work on and he wants to, come to fruition on. And that aligns much more with Donald Trump than it is with Kamala Harris. And that's not even close. So last night was highlighted by Barack Obama, who was front and center with his wife, Michelle. And as always, they do a very good job as orators. They're good speakers. I'll give them that much. But was there a lot of there? No. Barack Obama broke out the 2008 playbook of hope and change. And oh, by the way, Donald Trump's a mean old man. But this is where he lost me. This is where Barack Obama, for all of his speaking talents, totally lost me.
Joe and I come from different backgrounds, but we became brothers. And as we worked together for 8, sometimes pretty tough years, what I came to admire most about Joe wasn't just his smarts, his experience. It was his empathy and his decency.
His smarts? Listen, there's a lot of things you can say about Joe Biden. A couple of those things might be nice. But Joe Biden never walked into a room and was the smartest guy. Unless everybody else in the room had had a lobotomy, Joe Biden is not the smartest guy of any room he walks into. Now, Joe Biden served his purpose for Barack Obama. Obama, the junior U.S. senator, kind of new kid on the block, needed that establishment guy, connect with the white working class voter back in 2008. And old Scranton Joe came through for the big guy. No doubt about it. I'm not denying that for a second. But please, no one is ever going to confuse Joe Biden with a Mensa member. Nobody. So that's where Barack lost me last night. You want to wax poetic about Joe? Okay, fine. You want to throw Joe a bone after you threw him right off the cliff a month ago? That's really nice of you. But please. And by the way, if you noticed, Kamala was not there last night. The reporting suggests that the reason Kamala Harris was not there last night is because there is still such beef between Obama and Biden that Kamala did not want to be there and appear like she was, infatuated by Barack Obama and then piss off Joe. This is the report from Jackie Heinrich of Fox News. She says VP Harris held an event 90 miles away from the DNC on the night the party's two most popular figures, Barack and Michelle, campaigned on her behalf. A source familiar with the DNC planning tells Fox that choice was made out of sensitivity and respect to Joe Biden. The Obamas are still not on the White House good side, a source familiar with the situation said, it would not be helpful to their relationships. Fox is told this plan came together to avoid the optics of Harris, still serving as Biden's VP, appearing alongside one of the figures he views as responsible for driving the end of his reelection bid. At the very convention, which was supposed to be his only weeks ago. We are in tricky territory, the source added. Oh, you don't say. Tricky territory indeed. And that's why Kamala Harris was not there while the Obamas are putting on their show last night. And now I'm seeing Quentin Lucas rolling out some of his pictures. I guess he's there at the DNC, schmoozing Gavin Newsom. Wonder if they're talking about how to fix crime and homelessness together. That would be a hilarious conversation to watch, by the way. A lot of non-answers, but a lot of words. All right, I'm going to duck before I say this, or right after I say this. The most likable speaker the last two nights was second gentleman Doug Emhoff. I mean, the guy, listen, it was goofy, it was awkward, but the guy's up there talking about fantasy football from the early 90s, group texts with his buddies from, high school. That in and of itself was personal. It was endearing. It was more normal and more relatable than anything I've seen Kamala Harris say or do in years because she comes off like a machine. He was just kind of the goofy, aw shucks husband up there being like, yeah, my fantasy football team was named Nirvana back in 92 and it still is.
I've never heard the guy talk before last night, so I thought that was pretty cool also.
Well, and listen, he's not a great public speaker. He's not like going to knock your socks off and rile up the crowd. That's not who he is. He kind of had his hands in his pockets like, shucks, I'm here. I'll tell you about my fantasy football team. And, he kind of left out the part, by the way, where he knocked up the babysitter, not the babysitter,
nanny.
the nanny.
Yep.
And, that whole deal in terms of how he got divorced. But outside of leaving off that part of his life story, it was one of those deals where it was kind of like aw shucksy, relatable, and normal. And in a night that didn't have a lot of normal and hasn't had a lot of normal the last two nights, Doug Emhoff was normal. Doug Emhoff was like a guy that I watched up there and said, yeah, I could probably have a beer with him and talk fantasy football, if nothing else. And that's kind of problematic when I watch all of these speeches the last couple of nights, and he's the guy where I'm like, yo, that was actually like, okay, kind of normal. I was fine with that. Now I have to duck. But anyway, there was plenty to not like. And the class warfare was really on full blast last night. The first night was all like abortion, abortion, abortion. We love abortion, 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 abortion. Have we told you can get abortions, by the way, right here outside of the DNC? You can get an abortion. He can get a vasectomy, the whole deal. So it was all about abortion. Last night was going back to really class warfare and trying to bring up talking points that Obama used very effectively during his time in office and when he ran in this game of class warfare. But as Ben Shapiro just put up on X, I think this is a great point. Ben's on KCMO every day at 2 o'clock. The entire DNC last night was built on the premise that living your entire life as a politician paid by the taxpayers, confiscating the wealth of others, and then making bank off said politics is legitimate, and that private wealth is not. That's exactly right. Barack Obama went right down that well last night, and there were no ifs, ands, or buts. Barack was going to play that card. It had worked for him for the better part of 16 years, so he went right back to that well.
Here's a 78-year-old billionaire who has not stopped whining about his problems since he rode down his golden escalator 9 years ago.
Well, I don't know about that. I mean, his problems and part of that, your DOJ is targeting him for the better part of 2 years. But, yeah, why bother bringing that part of the conversation up? And then there was Michelle Obama, who flew in from her $20 million compound on Martha's Vineyard, 29 and a half acres, to say that, boy, when it comes to people having money, you've got to be very suspicious of that.
You see, my mom, in her steady, quiet way, lived out that striving sense of hope every single day of her life. She believed that all children, all people have value, that anyone can succeed if given the opportunity. She and my father didn't aspire to be wealthy. In fact, they were suspicious of folks who took more than they needed.
Has Michelle Obama taken more than she needed? Has Barack Obama taken more than he needed? Do you need the 29 acres on the coast of Martha's Vineyard? Do you need the house in Hawaii, the home in Chicago? Do you need those things? Especially when those things are only gained because of the fact that you were a politician. Not because you invented something, not because you created some business that employed thousands of people that made everybody else's life better, but because you literally held public office in America. Is that more than they need, John?
Well, if our parents were genuinely suspicious of the rich, then guess who's not invited to Thanksgiving, right?
Yeah, they're not going to make it this year, are they?
I don't think so.
How do you square these things? And I know that class warfare worked effectively for Barack Obama, but I'm telling you right now, working people are not stupid. They're not going to sit there and say, gosh, you're right. Everything's gone up 20% in my life the last 3 years because of the rich guy. That's why this is happening. Price gouging. Have you seen them? Yeah, gauging, yes, as right. Kamala said yesterday. Have you seen the costs? Have you seen the prices at grocery stores? Have you seen the margins at grocery stores? It's 2-3%. It hasn't really changed in recent years. So is it really that? Or is it awful economic policies coming out of a centralized government where they pump trillions of dollars into an economy, they devalue the dollar, and then as a result, the cost of everything goes up? The playbook is so tired. It worked great in 2008 for Obama, when, by the way, he wasn't the rich guy that he is now bagging on. It worked then. It doesn't work when you and Joe Biden have been in the White House for 12 of the last 16 years and have done nothing when it comes to promises made on these issues. It worked 16 years ago. It does not work today when you guys have had power for over a decade of the last decade and a half. Sorry, it doesn't work.